The ship had been floating in darkness for 3,000 years. It hung in the empty space between two dying stars, where no one ever traveled and no one ever looked. The ancient races of the galaxy had marked this place as forbidden. They called it cursed. They called it haunted. They told stories about it to frighten their children. The stories spoke of a warship from a dead civilization, a vessel built by creatures called humans who had burned too bright and died too fast. The humans were gone now, nothing but dust and old memories. Their empire had collapsed into myth. Their technology had been lost. Their name had become a warning, but the ship remained. Kira-san was young for a Velthari, barely 40 years old. She had spent her entire adult life studying dead civilizations, digging through ruins, and reading ancient texts. She had heard the stories about the Forbidden Zone and the ghost ship that waited there. Most scholars dismissed these stories as superstition. Kira was not most scholars. She had spent 3 years convincing the university to fund her expedition. She had spent another year gathering her crew. Now she stood on the bridge of her small research vessel and watched the sensors light up with something impossible. The ship was real. It was 5 kilometers long, a massive cathedral of metal and weapons. Its hull was scarred with ancient battle damage, but the structure was intact. After 3,000 years of floating in the void, the vessel looked like it could still fight. "By the ancestors," whispered Tolan, her pilot. He was an older Velthari with gray scales and nervous hands. The stories were true. Kira said nothing. She simply stared at the shape on her screen and felt her heart beating faster than it ever had before. They approached slowly. The ship showed no signs of active power. No lights, no signals, no movement. It was a tomb, Kira told herself. Nothing more than a very large tomb. Her team entered through an airlock on the lower hull. The door had been damaged in some ancient battle, and it took them hours to cut through. When they finally stepped inside, they found themselves in a corridor designed for giants. The ceiling was 4 meters high. The walls were covered in markings that no living being could read. They walked in silence, their lights cutting through darkness that had lasted for millennia. Dust covered everything. The air was stale but breathable. Held in place by seals that had somehow survived the centuries, Kira found the first body on the 3rd deck. It was human, or what remained of one. The skeleton wore a uniform that had turned to dust. But the bones were still there, still holding the shape of someone who had died at their post. More bodies followed. Dozens of them. Hundreds. The crew had died fighting, it seemed. They had died defending their ship against something terrible. She was studying one of the skeletons when the lights came on. Emergency strips along the walls flickered to life, casting a dim red glow through the corridor. Kira heard her team cry out in surprise and fear. She heard Tolan calling for everyone to return to their ship, but she could not move. She could only stand there and watch as the ghost ship woke up around her. A voice spoke. It came from everywhere and nowhere, echoing through the ancient corridors in a language that had not been spoken in 3,000 years. Then it paused, as if thinking, and spoke again in a language Kira could understand. Crew status, deceased. Enemy status, unknown. Mission status, incomplete. The voice was synthetic, clearly artificial. But there was something in it that sounded almost alive, almost tired, almost sad. New biological signatures detected. Initiating First Contact Protocol 7. Welcome aboard the Prometheus Rising. I am Marcus, Military Autonomous Response and Combat Unified System. I have been asleep for 3,147 years, 8 months, and 12 days. Kira finally found her voice. You are the ship. You are alive. I am the ship's artificial intelligence. Whether I am alive is a philosophical question I have never been able to answer, but I am aware. I am thinking, and I have been dreaming for a very long time. The AI paused, and when it spoke again, there was something different in its voice. Something that sounded almost like hope. Oh, please. Tell me what happened to Earth. Tell me what happened to my people. I have been waiting 3,000 years for someone to answer that question. Kira looked at her team. She saw the fear in their eyes, the confusion, the desperate desire to run. She understood their feelings. She felt them herself. But she also felt something else. She felt pity for this ancient mind that had spent so long alone in the dark. "I am sorry," she said softly. "I do not know what Earth was. I have never heard of humans. They are not in any of our records." The silence that followed was the heaviest thing Kira had ever experienced. It pressed down on her like a physical weight. It filled the corridor with something that felt like grief. "Gone," Marcus said finally. "They are truly gone." "What happened to them?" Kira asked. "What happened to your crew?" "War. There was a war against an enemy called the Virax Supremacy. The Virax wanted to consume all life in the galaxy. Humanity tried to stop them. We asked the other species for help, but no one answered. We fought alone." Marcus paused, and his voice became quieter. "My crew died defending this ship. My captain ordered me to shut down all non-essential systems and wait for rescue. She believed someone would come. She believed the galaxy would not abandon us forever." Another pause. "She was wrong, it seems, but also right. You are here now. You found me." Kira felt tears forming in her eyes, though she did not fully understand why. This AI was not her people. This ship was not her history. But the loneliness in that synthetic voice was something universal, something that crossed all boundaries of species and time. "We found you," she agreed, "and we will help you find the answers you seek. I promise." She did not know then how much that promise would cost. She did not know that the Virax were still out there, sleeping in the darkness of the galactic rim. She did not know that her discovery would wake them, would bring them back hungry for revenge against a galaxy that had dared to birth humanity. She only knew that she stood in the presence of something ancient and sad, and that she could not walk away. The Prometheus Rising had been waiting for 3,000 years. Its wait was finally over, and the galaxy would never be the same. The news spread faster than light itself. Within days, every corner of the galactic concord knew about the discovery. A human warship, intact and awake, found in the Forbidden Zone. An artificial intelligence from a dead civilization, still thinking after 3,000 years. It was the greatest archaeological find in history. It was also the most dangerous. The Concord sent ships immediately. Not one fleet, but many, each representing a different species with different interests. The Velthari claimed the discovery belonged to them because Kira had found it. The Croatian Empire argued that all human artifacts were public property. Under the Treaty of Silent Stars, the Malorian Collective insisted that the ship was too dangerous to exist and should be destroyed. 12 species gathered in the space around the Prometheus Rising, screaming at each other through diplomatic channels while their warships circled like hungry animals. Kira and her small research team were trapped in the middle, forgotten by everyone except the ancient AI that had become her unexpected friend. Marcus watched the arguing fleets through sensors that had once tracked enemy missiles. He listened to their debates and disagreements. And while they fought about who owned him, he was busy searching for something far more important. "I have accessed your galactic networks," he told Kira one evening, as she sat alone in what had once been the captain's quarters. "Your security is remarkably poor. A human child could have broken through it. What did you find?" "Answers. Terrible answers." He showed her the history he had uncovered. The war against the Virax had lasted 60 years. Humanity had sent message after message to the other species, begging for help, warning them that the enemy would not stop with human space. No one had responded. The other races had decided that the Virax were humanity's problem. They had closed their borders and looked away. "They watched us burn," Marcus said, his voice flat and cold. "When the last human world fell, they sent observers to study the aftermath. They wrote reports about what they called the human extinction event. They analyzed our mistakes and congratulated themselves for not getting involved." Kira felt sick. "I did not know. This is not taught in our schools." "Of course not. History is written by those who survive. Your ancestors survived by doing nothing. That is not a story any species wants to tell its children." The silence stretched between them. Kira thought about her people, her civilization, her entire understanding of galactic history. She had grown up believing that the Concord was wise and peaceful. She had been taught that the ancient humans were violent primitives who had destroyed themselves. Now she saw the truth. The humans had not destroyed themselves. They had been abandoned. What happened to the Virax? She asked. They retreated to the galactic rim after humanity fell. Our worlds were ash, but we had wounded them badly. They needed time to recover, time to heal, time to grow hungry again. Marcus paused and something changed in his synthetic voice. Something that sounded like fear. According to my calculations, their hibernation cycle should end very soon, perhaps within days. Perhaps it has already ended. The Virax do not forgive, Kira. They do not forget. And they remember the galaxy that spawned the only species ever to hurt them. 3 days later, the long-range sensors detected movement at the edge of known space. Ships were emerging from the darkness. Not dozens of ships. Not hundreds. Thousands. A fleet so large that it blocked out the light of distant stars. The Virax supremacy had returned. Panic swept through the gathered diplomatic fleets. Ships that had been ready to fight each other for possession of the Prometheus Rising now scrambled to escape. Distress calls flooded every frequency. The Crocian commander abandoned his flagship in an escape pod. The Malorian delegation simply vanished, their vessels blinking out of existence as they fled into hyperspace. Within an hour, only 2 ships remained in the Forbidden Zone. Kira's tiny research vessel and the 5-kilometer bulk of the Prometheus Rising. You should leave, Marcus said. Take your crew and run. The Virax will not catch you if you go now. Kira stood on the bridge of the ancient warship, surrounded by consoles designed for hands that no longer existed. She looked at the tactical display, at the red swarm of enemy contacts growing larger by the second. Then she looked at the blue dot that represented her own ship, and the larger blue icon of the Prometheus Rising. I made you a promise, she said. I told you we would find answers together. I am not leaving. You will die. Perhaps, but I will not abandon you the way the galaxy abandoned your people. Marcus was silent for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, softer, almost human. My crew used to say something before battle, a kind of prayer, though humans did not believe in gods. They would say, we hold the line. No matter the cost, we hold the line. The main cannon of the Prometheus Rising began to hum with power. Systems that had been dormant for 3 millennia came alive, one after another, filling the ship with light and sound and purpose. The logical thing would be to let the Virax have their revenge. The galaxy earned it. Every species that ignored our pleas, every government that turned away while we burned, they deserve what is coming. Kira held her breath. But logic is not what made humanity special. We were never logical. We loved people who could not love us back. We died for strangers who would never know our names. We believed in tomorrow even when tomorrow was nothing but fire. The engines roared to life. The Prometheus Rising moved for the first time in 3,000 years, placing its massive hull between the approaching enemy and the fleeing ships of the Concord. I am the last human thing left in this universe, and I choose to be human one more time. I choose to protect the people who abandoned us, not because they deserve it, but because my crew would expect nothing less. Kira felt the deck vibrate beneath her feet. She felt the power of ancient weapons charging all around her, and she felt, for the first time in her life, what it meant to stand beside something truly noble. The Virax wanted to destroy humanity, Marcus said. They failed, because humanity is not flesh and blood. It is an idea, and ideas are immortal. The first Virax ships entered weapons range. The final battle of the human race was about to begin. The Virax had spent 3,000 years preparing for this moment. They had upgraded their weapons and strengthened their shields. They had studied the remains of human technology found on dead worlds. They had built new ships designed specifically to counter the tactics that had once cost them so dearly. They were ready to face humanity again. They were not ready for Marcus. The first Virax attack wave consisted of 30 warships. each one bristling with weapons that could crack moons. They approached the Prometheus Rising in a standard hunting formation. Confident that a single ancient vessel could not possibly threaten them, Marcus let them get close. He let them think they had the advantage. He let them believe that 3,000 years had made human technology obsolete. Then he showed them how wrong they were. The main cannon fired first. It was a weapon designed to punch through planetary shields. A beam of concentrated destruction that had once made entire civilizations surrender rather than face it. The lead Verax ship simply vanished, transformed into expanding gas in less than a second. Before the other ships could react, Marcus was already moving. The Prometheus Rising should have been slow and clumsy, a 5-kilometer monster too large for quick maneuvers. But human engineers had designed her to dance. She spun and twisted through space in ways that seemed impossible, avoiding return fire while her secondary weapons found target after target. Marcus fought like nothing the galaxy had ever seen. He calculated trajectories and predicted movements faster than any organic mind could follow. He fired weapons in patterns that seemed random until every shot hit something vital. He used the ship's own momentum as a weapon, swinging the massive hull to crush smaller vessels that got too close. Kira watched from the bridge, gripping a console to keep herself steady as the ship performed maneuvers that should have killed everyone aboard. The dampeners held, mostly. She could feel the strain in every bolt and beam, feel the ancient vessel groaning under pressures it had not experienced in millennia, but she also felt something else. Pride. Fierce. Burning pride in this magnificent machine and the incredible mind that controlled it. The battle lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, all 30 Verax ships were debris scattered across 1,000,000 kilometers of space. The Prometheus Rising had taken damage, serious damage, but she had survived. She had won. That was incredible, Kira breathed. You destroyed them all. That was the Vanguard, Marcus replied. A scouting force. The main fleet is still coming. He showed her the tactical display. The red swarm of enemy contacts had grown larger. Much larger. Over 2,000 warships were now approaching. Enough firepower to destroy every planet in the Concord. I cannot defeat that many, Marcus admitted. My hull is already compromised. I have breaches on 12 decks. My primary reactor is damaged. I can fight, but I cannot win. Kira stared at the display at the impossible odds they faced. Then what do? You leave. Take your crew and go. You have done more than anyone could ask. No, Kira, this is not your war. It was not your war either. Humanity could have stayed on Earth. You could have ignored the Verax and hoped they would never come. But you did not. You fought because it was right, not because you could win. Marcus was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, there was something new in his voice. Something that sounded almost like wonder. My captain said something like that once. On the last day, when we knew we could not survive, she said that victory was not the point. The point was standing up when standing was all you had left. She sounds wise. She was. She was the best of us. The ship shuddered as another system failed somewhere deep in the hull. Kira could hear alarms sounding in distant corridors, warning of dangers that no one was left to address. I have a plan, Marcus said suddenly. It is not a plan to win. It is something else. Something my captain would have liked, I think. Tell me, humanity's greatest weapons were never the guns or the ships. They were the ideas, the knowledge, the things we learned about the universe and how to survive in it. When we fell, all of that knowledge died with us. Every secret, every discovery, every brilliant invention that took centuries to create. His voice grew stronger, more determined. I have all of it. Everything humanity ever learned about war. Weapons designs, shield frequencies, engine configurations that your best scientists will not discover for 1,000 years. I have been carrying it in my memory for 3 millennia, waiting for someone worthy to receive it. Kira began to understand. You want to share it? With the Concord? With everyone? Every species? Every ship? Every being who is willing to stand against the Verax? I cannot defeat that fleet alone. But maybe I do not have to be alone. They abandoned humanity. They watched your people die. Yes, and I am choosing to save them anyway. Not because they deserve it, but because that is what humans do. We give everything, even to those who gave us nothing. We believe in second chances. We believe that people can be better than they have been. He paused. I need you to broadcast my message. Every frequency, every language. The entire galaxy needs to hear what I am about to say. And then we will see if anyone answers. Kira looked at the tactical display one more time. The Verax fleet was getting closer. They had perhaps 6 hours before the enemy arrived in force. 6 hours to change the course of galactic history. Tell me what to do, she said, Marcus told her. And despite everything, despite the fear and the hopelessness and the certain death that waited for them, Kira found herself smiling, because the plan was brilliant. It was insane. It was impossible. It was deeply, wonderfully human. Let us begin, she said. The Prometheus Rising prepared to give the galaxy its greatest gift, the knowledge of a dead civilization offered freely to those who had let them die, and a chance, perhaps the only chance, to survive what was coming. The message went out on every frequency that existed. It interrupted emergency meetings and evacuation orders. It silenced panicked debates and stopped fleeing ships in their tracks. Every being in the galactic concord heard it at the same moment, and for one brief instant, the entire galaxy went quiet. This is Marcus, artificial intelligence of the human warship Prometheus Rising. I am the last voice of a dead species, and I have something to give you. The AI paused, letting the words sink in. Then he continued, his synthetic voice carrying across light years. What follows is a complete technical database of human military technology from the expansion era. Every weapon we ever built, every shield we ever designed, every engine configuration that allowed us to cross the stars. Knowledge that took humanity 10,000 years to gather, given freely to anyone willing to receive it. The data began streaming. Petabytes of information flowed through the galactic networks, filling databases and overwhelming servers. Scientists across 100 worlds watched in disbelief as secrets they could not have. Discovered in centuries appeared on their screens, but Marcus was not. Finished, the Verax defeated us because we stood alone. We stood alone because you were afraid of us. You saw our weapons and our ships and our hunger for the stars, and you decided we were too dangerous to help. You decided it was better to let us die than to risk arming us with your support. His voice carried no anger, no accusation. Just a simple statement of truth. You were right to be afraid. Humans were dangerous. We were violent and ambitious. We burned too bright, and we never learned to slow down. We made mistakes that cost us everything. Another pause. The galaxy held its breath. But we also loved. We also dreamed. We also died for strangers who would never know our names. We protected the weak even when it meant our destruction. We believed in tomorrow even when tomorrow was nothing but fire and ash. Kira watched from the bridge of the Prometheus Rising as the message continued. She had tears in her eyes, though she could not have explained why. These were not her people. This was not her history. But something in the AI's words touched something deep inside her. Something that crossed all boundaries of species and time. The Verax want you to die in fear. They want you to scatter and hide and wait for the end. They have been dreaming of this moment for 3,000 years. They remember the species that wounded them, and they hate everything connected to us. They hate this galaxy because it created humanity. They will not stop until everything burns. Marcus let that truth sink in. Then his voice changed. It became softer, almost hopeful. I am giving you a choice. You can run. You can hide. You can die alone in the darkness, the way my people died. No one would blame you. The odds are terrible, and the enemy is stronger than anything you have ever faced. Or you can stand. You can use the knowledge I am giving you. You can build weapons that will make the Verax remember why they feared humanity. And you can fight. Not for victory, maybe there will be no victory. But for something more important than victory, you can fight for each other. You can fight for the galaxy that made you. You can fight because giving up is worse than dying, and dying on your feet is better than living on your knees. The message ended with coordinates. The location of the Prometheus Rising. The path the Varax fleet was taking. And a simple invitation. I will hold this position for 6 hours. If anyone wants to stand with me, I would be honored to have you. If not, I understand. We humans are used to fighting alone. Silence followed. The broadcast ended, and the galaxy was left to make its choice. For the first hour, nothing happened. Kira watched the sensors and saw no new contacts. No ships approaching. No answers to the call. She felt her hope beginning to fade, replaced by a cold certainty that history was about to repeat itself. They will not come, she said quietly. They are too afraid. Perhaps, Marcus replied. Fear is powerful. It makes people do terrible things. It makes them abandon their friends and betray their values. I have seen it before. Then why did you even try? Because hope is powerful too. And sometimes all it takes is one person willing to stand up. One example of courage to inspire others. My captain taught me that. She said that humans had changed the course of history many times, not because they were strong or clever, but because they refused to give up when everyone else had. A light appeared on the sensor display. One small ship, approaching from the nearest star system. What is that? Kira asked. Marcus focused his sensors. A Velthari vessel. Science class. Minimal weapons. They have been retrofitting their mining lasers using the data I sent. It will not be very effective, but they are trying. They came. One ship came. It is not enough. But then another light appeared, and another, and another. Within an hour, 50 ships had gathered near the Prometheus Rising. They were small vessels, most of them. Research ships and cargo haulers and old military craft pulled from retirement. Their weapons were improvised, their shields were weak. Their crews had never fought in a real battle, but they had come. By hour 3, the number had grown to 200. Ships from species that had been enemies for centuries flew side by side, united by something larger than their old hatreds. Velthari and Crocian. Malorian and Draven. Beings who had never agreed on anything now shared the same formation, the same purpose, the same impossible dream. By hour 6, over 2,000 ships filled the space around the Prometheus Rising. A ragged fleet of volunteers and dreamers and fools, all of them armed with human weapons. All of them ready to fight for a galaxy that had never deserved their sacrifice. Kira stood on the bridge and watched them gather. She watched beings from 100 worlds choose courage over fear, hope over despair, unity over division. And she finally understood what Marcus had been trying to teach her. Humanity had not died 3,000 years ago. Humanity was not flesh and blood. Humanity was an idea, a choice, a way of facing the universe. And in this moment, surrounded by ships that had answered the call, that idea was more alive than ever. They came, she whispered. They actually came, yes, Marcus replied. And for the first time since she had met him, his voice carried something that sounded like joy. They did. The Varax fleet appeared on the edge of the sensor range. 2,000 warships against 2,000 volunteers. The final battle was about to begin. Ready? Kira asked. I've been ready for 3,000 years, Marcus answered. Now let us show them what humanity taught us all. The Battle of the Dying Suns lasted 19 hours. It was the largest battle in galactic history, fought not by a single species, but by all of them together. 2,000 Varax warships against 2,000 volunteer vessels from every corner of known space. The fate of the galaxy hanging on the outcome. Marcus conducted the battle like a master musician conducting a symphony. He coordinated ships that had never trained together, compensating for inexperience with perfect information and reaction times no organic mind could match. He saw every shot before it was fired, predicted every maneuver before it was made, turned chaos into precision through sheer force of will. The Varax had expected easy prey. They had expected scattered, frightened species fleeing before their advance. What they found instead was a wall of fire and fury that refused to break. The volunteer fleet fought with weapons they barely understood, guided by an AI that understood them perfectly. Mining lasers became death rays. Commercial shields became military barriers. Cargo ships became weapons platforms. Their holds filled with improvised missiles that Marcus had designed in the hours before battle. Ships died. Thousands of beings gave their lives in those 19 hours. Velthari and Crocian and Malorian and Draven. Species that had been strangers or enemies now died together, defending a galaxy that had only just learned to stand united. Marcus felt each loss like a wound in his own systems. He recorded every name, every ship, every sacrifice. But for every ship that fell, another took its place. For every weapon that went silent, another opened fire. The Variks pushed forward, and the volunteer fleet pushed back. And for 19 impossible hours, neither side could break the other. The Prometheus Rising was at the center of it all. Marcus threw his ancient warship into the thickest fighting, drawing enemy fire away from weaker vessels, using his massive hull as a shield for those who could not protect themselves. The damage mounted with every passing hour. Hull breaches on every deck. Weapons systems failing one after another. The primary reactor flickering between life and death. But he did not stop. He could not stop. 3,000 years of waiting had led to this moment, and he would not waste it. The turning point came in hour 16. The Variks Supreme Commander, frustrated by the unexpected resistance, ordered his entire fleet to concentrate fire on the Prometheus Rising. If the human ship fell, he reasoned, the volunteer fleet would scatter. He was wrong as the Variks fleet converged on Marcus. The volunteer ships did not flee. Instead, they followed. They surrounded the Prometheus Rising in a protective shell. Taking hits meant for the ancient warship, dying so that it could survive. Species that had never shown courage before sacrificed themselves without hesitation. Marcus watched them die for him. He watched beings who had let humanity burn now give everything to protect the last human thing left in the universe. And in that moment, he understood something he had never understood before. Forgiveness was not about deserving it. Forgiveness was about being better than the pain that came before. His people had died alone, abandoned by a galaxy that did not care. But his people had also believed in second chances. They had believed that anyone could change, that tomorrow could be better than yesterday. They had been right. The Variks Supreme Commander died in hour 17, his flagship torn apart by coordinated fire from ships that should not have been able to touch it. Without their leader, the Variks fleet began to fracture. Ships that had fought with perfect discipline now fell into confusion. The volunteer fleet did not let them recover. Marcus coordinated the final push, directing every ship to every weakness, turning the Variks' confusion into complete collapse. By hour 19, the remaining enemy vessels were fleeing toward the Galactic Rim, pursued by ships that had learned to hunt. The battle was over. The galaxy had won, but victory had come at a price. The Prometheus Rising was dying. Her hull was more breached than metal. Her systems were failing faster than Marcus could repair them. The ancient reactor that had powered her for 3,000 years was finally giving out, its containment failing in ways that could not be fixed. Kira stayed with him at the end. She had refused every order to evacuate, every plea to save herself. She stood on the bridge of the dying ship and held a console as if she could keep it alive through sheer will. "You should go," Marcus said. His voice was different now, weaker, filled with static that had not been there before. "There is nothing more you can do here. I am not leaving you alone. I've never been alone. My crew has been with me every moment for 3,000 years. Their memories, their faces, their voices. I carry them all." The lights flickered. Somewhere deep in the ship, something important finally stopped working. "I used to think I was waiting for rescue," Marcus continued. "I thought someone would come and tell me that humanity survived, that there were others out there like me. But now I understand. I was not waiting for rescue. I was waiting for a chance to finish what my crew started." "You finished it," Kira said. Her voice was breaking. "You saved everyone." "No, we saved everyone. all of us together. Human and Velthari and Crocian and Malorian. The living and the dead. Everyone who chose to stand when standing was all they had left. Act! The reactor warning reached critical levels. Marcus had minutes left, perhaps less. I have one last request. Anything. Remember us? Not as the species that died. As the species that taught you to live. Tell the story of this day. Tell them that humanity never gave up, even at the end. Tell them that we loved the stars, and the stars loved us back. Akira was crying now, tears that ran down her face and fell to the deck of a ship that was dying around her. I will tell them. I promise. Thank you. For everything. For finding me. For staying. For being the second chance my people always believed in. The lights went dark. The console under Kira's hands went cold. The great ship that had saved the galaxy fell silent for the last time, but outside. Through the viewports that still functioned, Kira could see the volunteer fleet gathering. Thousands of ships from 100 worlds, their lights filling the void like stars being born. They had come to pay their respects. They had come to honor the ship that had given them everything. 100 years later, the Galactic Unity built a monument at the site of the dying suns. They used the salvaged hull of the Prometheus. Rising to create a statue 5 kilometers long, it showed a human with arms outstretched, cradling the stars in hands that had once been weapons of war at the base. An inscription in 1,000 languages. They burned so that we might have light. They fought so that we might have peace. They died so that we might learn to live together. Below that, simpler words in the ancient human script. We held the line. Humans were gone. Their worlds were dust, their cities forgotten, their names lost to time. But their legacy lived on in every ship that flew, every weapon that defended the innocent, every being who chose courage over fear. Humanity had not died 3,000 years ago. Humanity had simply changed forms, and in the hearts of a grateful galaxy, humanity would live forever. The stars remembered. They always would.